So just a wee disclaimer here, the session is going to be recorded, but we're only recording the speakers. So once we go into the chat session, that's not going to be recorded. So please at that stage, join in, engage in the chat, and that it is a safe space to do that. You're not going to be, you know, the recording isn't going to have you in it. So please don't worry about that. And that's just so we can share these online for more teachers who can't make it to see what's happening. Just a couple of things regarding kind of protocols for the session, but if you have any questions, you can pop a star in the chat box if you want to kind of speak up and verbalize them, and it's lovely to hear all your voices. So please, we welcome that. We welcome this to be a kind of open discussion today, but you might feel more comfortable typing it in the chat box, and that's also okay. So please do that. If you're sort of somebody saying something you really kind of think it's, you know, you relate to it and you agree with it, you can put a plus in the comment box as well. And just while the kind of presentation section's going on, we ask that you mute just for background noise. But once we go into the more discussion section, please come off mute and let's have a conversation. That's what it's all about. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you a bit of just an introduction to YPI. Then Hannah's going to do a case study, and then we're going to have a think about just what this could mean for you going forward. What is the relevance of this to you in your setting, whether that is YPI, if you're delivering the programme already, or if you're not delivering the programme, maybe you've just got an interest in this area. What context, what does it mean for you in your context? And then just a wee bit of encouragement to continue to engage with the Creative Bravery Festival. So there's lots more going on in the Discovery Tent, in the tool shed, in the lookout area, and there's collaboration cafes as well that you can join in the morning and in the evening. And they're just a really great chance to talk with like-minded people, educators, community partners, wider partners of it that are focused on education and supporting young people. So it's just some really fascinating things ongoing. So right up until Sunday, it is on. So I'm just going to stop here and do a wee poll if that's okay, because I just kind of keen to get a sense of who's in the room and who knows about YPI and who doesn't. And this will just give me a sense of how much long I need to kind of dwell on this bit. So if you're okay, I'll bring up the poll. So just a quick one, do you have first-hand experience of YPI? We're starting off easy. Is a yes or a no? Just give you a couple of minutes. And once we've done, we can share the results just so you get a sense of who's in the room. Okay, so 75, 25%. Okay, that's nice and clean. So the majority have, but some haven't. And I really hope for those of you who haven't, it's a good introduction, but also gets you thinking. It's still we're going to show you a great case study of expeditionary learning that can be applied in a variety of settings, hopefully. So beyond just looking at it in the sense of YPI. Just going to go on to the next poll question as well, just to get a sense of what you're here to explore. If what you're here to explore isn't on the list, please pop it in the chat if there's something that you really got a burning desire to hear about or to learn about. So just what's your motivation for attending the session today? Is it to look at development opportunities within your programme if you are delivering YPI and familiar with YPI? You're interested in hearing more about YPI. You might not even know what that is yet, so don't worry, I'm coming to that. You're interested in expeditionary, project-based or real-world context for learning. Keen to explore expeditionary learning and how it can be applied in your own context, to understand more about what we mean by beautiful work or something else. And as I say, if it's something else, feel free to pop that in the chat bar as well.
You can also select multiple options if you wish.
Oh, good choice. Yes, good prompt, Alex. Okay. So Okay, so the sort of beautiful work, expeditionary learning, project-based learning, well, that's good because Hannah is going to tick that off, no problem, which is great. So, okay, so let's dive into the presentation then. So, for those of you who aren't aware of YPI, so YPI stands for the Youth and Philanthropy Initiative. It's an initiative that's been running in Scottish schools for about 12 years now. It was a Canadian programme. The premise is that each school is given a £3,000 grant to award to a local charity. But through the process, the young people have to go through the process of teamwork, research and competition. So the structure of the programme looks very different in each school. It can be delivered from S2 to S6 and in a variety of different curricular areas, but common areas are RME, PS, personal education, PSE, social subjects, business, English, or a combination of those. So it's a really diverse programme, and through YPI we've engaged over 200,000 young people so far and granted 4.5 million to local grassroots charities across Scotland. So, you know, the scale of the programme has gone from a pilot of 8 schools now to working with 250 schools this year, which is slightly less than last year, recognising the impact of COVID. But I think we feel really proud of that position. It represents about 70% of all Scottish secondary schools delivering the programme. Last year was obviously a very unusual year for us. Halfway through the year, only half the schools had completed when lockdown was introduced, which meant we'd granted £423,000 at that point. Now we had to pivot quite quickly and came up with a Your Community Fund, which was an online version of YPI that schools who didn't complete the programme could engage with, and that allowed us to grant another £200,000 to local grassroots charities. This year, as I said, we've got 250 schools signed up, and I think the real relevance here is that young people talking about social issues, exploring social issues, only feels more relevant in this COVID era. The social issues that were coming out on top last year in terms of young people advocating on behalf of these were mental health, health and food poverty. So really relevant issues as we work our way through COVID, and hopefully, you know, it will at some point be a memory, but a memory that has impacted us all. And just in terms of the grant making capacity of YPI, it's just never been more needed in the Scottish third sector. So young people's voice being heard and them directing money is key to what YPI is about. So that's just a very high overview. I'm happy to kind of connect with anyone who wants to know a bit more, but I don't want to dwell too much for those who are aware of the programme. So I'd set up this Miro board in advance and would set a bit of pre-work. Now it's not being engaged with kind of as well as in advance, and we totally understand that. We're on a learning curve with all of these different platforms, Miro, Padlet. So what we are going to do, we're going to use it a bit differently later on in the session, in that we're going to ask you to continue to use the chat function in Zoom, and Alex is going to drive the Miro and update that. So you can see how it works, but it is a really useful platform for sort of collaborating and discussion. So we can kind of get a sense of what that's going to look like later on in the session. So now I really want to hand over to the star of the show, Hannah, to tell us a bit about what she's doing through YPI. YPI is a flexible programme, so it looks different in every school. And we have schools who are delivering amazing programmes that are having real impact. But I think where schools get the biggest benefit from YPI is when they really think about what's at the heart in terms of that student-led learning, the leaving the classroom behind and the sort of experiential side of the programme, but also how important student voice is at the heart of YPI and their capacity to really drive it forward. And maximising that student voice and choice maximises then student engagement and maximises the impact, I think, on our local communities at YPI. So Hannah's kind of stepping out into delivering the programme a wee bit differently, and she's going to tell you what that looks like and hopefully provide some inspiration. Then we're going to open it up for some conversation and thought. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Lindsay. So as Lindsay said, my name's Hannah Johnston. I'm a social subjects and history teacher at Banff Academy. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how we've incorporated expeditionary learning into our delivery of YPI this year. So a little bit of background about me and the school. Sorry, Lindsay, I'm trying to click next on the PowerPoint. Not used to not having control of the screen. The school's been on a massive learning journey this year alongside the Wood Foundation and the Accelerate programme. And I've been lucky enough to partake in part of that process. So in September 2019, I got to visit Finland with children in Scotland, and I saw there the emphasis that they put on teacher collaboration, teacher planning time, and flexible learning environments. And then in February of this year, I got to visit XB schools in Doncaster with, again, the Accelerate programme through Wood Foundation, where we saw how they deliver their curriculum through something called expeditionary learning, which I will go on to explain. Then in March 2020, just before lockdown happened, I got a phone call from my head teacher asking if I would take a last minute spot on a CPD trip to the academies of Nashville. And 48 hours later, I was on a plane to Tennessee. And whilst we were there, again, we got to experience project-based learning, expeditionary learning, and that has inspired a lot of the changes that our senior leadership team have made within the school this year. And finally, from all of that, in July, during the summer holidays, inspired from everything that I'd seen on these visits, I took part in a 3-day PBL Works 101 course, so project-based learning course with the New Hampshire Learning Initiative, so that I was fully qualified to then deliver project-based learning or expeditionary learning within the school. So lockdown 2020 really gave our school the opportunity to do something different and take a risk. Our senior leadership team created a brand new timetable and a new school day structure. Within that, they incorporated more teacher planning and collaboration time. And from that allowed us time to build in expeditionary learning into our curriculum, and particularly for me, with a group of 14 S3 boys. So expeditionary learning, it was a 3-day, 7 hours a day course I took part on for project-based learning. So I could go on all day about project-based learning and expeditionary learning. But a very brief overview is expeditionary learning is an interdisciplinary project that involves pupils taking part in research, problem solving, and community engagement with the wider community. Within the project, the pupils will address real-world issues and problems that are relevant to their local area, have a positive impact on their local community, and this should reflect that their learning is purposeful, meaningful, and relevant to them. The end goal of an expedition is to create a beautiful piece of work that should be no different to a professional standard. So they're working towards creating something that is professional level, and to do that they might need to go through several stages of reflection, critique, and adaptations. So when we seen this in all of these different contexts in Nashville and XB in Doncaster, what it was really made obvious was that expeditionary learning or project-based learning pushes students to beyond what they think is possible. And from even just delivering this for a few weeks with this group of S3 boys, I can see the impact that it is having on their view of learning and what they consider learning to be. So a learning expedition is structured like this. It all starts with a driving question that should be open-ended and intertwined throughout the whole expedition. The first stage of the expedition is an immersive event where the pupils dive into the context surrounding their expedition, but without giving too much away. So from the immersive event, the goal is the pupils will try to guess the driving question themselves. So you don't tell them what they're going to be learning about, they have to suss it out. Then there's 3 individual case studies, and they end with the final product, which is, as I said, to professional standard, and they present that back. The large section at the end is a presentation of learning, which could be to their year group, to their peers, it could be to a panel, in this case it will be to a YPI panel, or to their parents and carers. So the driving question for this particular expedition, which is linked to YPI, is how can I make a difference to my community? And we thought that YPI would fit so nicely with the expeditionary model that once we got the ball rolling, it came so easily. So how can I make a difference to my community? Our immersive event was the boys watched The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, which, if you haven't seen it, is a documentary, or it's not a documentary, it's a film based on the book about a boy in Malawi who his parents cannot afford to put him to school anymore. He gets expelled from school, but he continues to sneak into the library to self-teach himself how to build a wind turbine to power a water pump to save his village from a drought. So the boys really connected well with that. They're roughly the same age as the boy in the film. It was a Netflix film, which engaged them straight away. They then went and told their friends about it. They'd watched it. And from that, they discussed things like community citizenship, entrepreneurship, philanthropy, and what those things mean to them. From that, we've just finished watching that this week and we've had our discussion. And we'll then be moving on to case study 1, where they're going to identify prominent members of our community who have made a difference and interview them. So obviously with the current COVID restrictions, we can't get people into the school building. So we've already contacted our BCSO, Business Community Support Officer. He's done a great job of contacting some prominent members of our community who have created videos for the boys and have sent them in ahead of time. Then they've identified people within the school community, such as the head boy, a guidance teacher, a member of SLT, that they'd like to come talk to them about how they make an impact on their community. Then from that, they're going to create a short publication on our local heroes. Then moving on to case study 2, this will be after the October holidays. We're going to go on a community walk where hopefully they will be able to identify potential social issues within our area. From that, they're going to create a video of these issues we've got a digital technology hub within the school with green screen, and they've got access to the school's photography cameras. How they aim to resolve these issues that they've identified whilst out on the community walk. Then case study 3 is getting more into the YPI process, where they're going to choose a social issue in particular and research local charities to work alongside them. They then need to make contact with these charities and start to work together to try and address the social issue, which again with COVID restrictions might be slightly more challenging this year, but YPI has been run for several years within the school. This is the first time that I've done it, but the business department and the RMPS department before then have done a great job with building connections with these local charities, so we will work around that when we get to it. Then from their case study 3, they're going to create their final project, which I've actually left a bit open-ended at the moment. I want them to, from their expeditionary learning journey, come up with a final project that is relevant to them, the social issue and the charity they've worked alongside. And they might work alongside the charity to produce that final project. However, they will be using project-based learning and expeditionary learning protocols to go through critique and reflection stages to create their beautiful work at the end of it. So they'll have their final product and they will present all of this back to the YPI panel on their project and their expeditionary learning journey, their parents and carers and their year group of how they've reached that stage. I don't think I've got on the slide, but an assessment for this is they're going to write a letter to the community of how they've made a difference by the time they get to that stage. We started it last week. It's going to go on to just beyond Christmas, I think. And by that point, I want them to be able to address the community with a personal letter of what is their idea of community, how have they made a difference, and how could they continue to make a difference in the future. So that was a lot of information in 10 minutes. I said I could go on for hours about expeditionary learning, but we would just like to hear some thoughts on this. So this is a PBL protocol. It's called I Like, I Have, I Wonder. in this, normally I'd ask pupils to say something they like about the presentation that they've just heard. So this is one of the reflective protocols that they use. Identify a question they may have about the presentation, and then wonder how this might have an impact on them. So how could this have an impact on your delivery of YPI or your general learning context? And Lindsay, would you like this done on the chat rather than on the Miro board?
Yeah, so I think Alex is going to bring up the Miro board, but then let's just do that in the chat. So if we could just spend a couple of minutes thinking about those questions. What do you like? What do you have? And what do you wonder? And again, think about your context. So for some it'll be about YPI. For some it'll be about, if you're not done YPI but you're in a learning context, what you could do and what it could mean for the program. So just keen to just kind of hear. Feel free to come off mute if you want to actually verbalize it, that's great too. But if you want to drop them into the chat box, that'd be really fascinating to start seeing them coming in, and we're going to try and capture these in the Miro board.